When a Venezuelan travels abroad, he's asked 3 questions. Are all your women like your beauty queens? Why are Chino and Nacho splitting? And what the hell is going on in Venezuela? Well, there is no precise way to describe what is going on here. You may say that we are in a catch the dog in the hour of the small one, or in a tremendous fart. But as you can see, you can't translate that. However, unlike a stubborn dad that won't admit that he's lost driving, I am going to tell you how we got here. First, let's introduce this story's main character, Nicolás Maduro, the villain that you get if you combine the Majin Buu with Mr. Satan from Dragon Ball. See? There you are. Maduro won the 2013 presidential election with a tight margin of 1.3% against Enrique Capriles, a little bit more than 200,000 votes, which means that if Chavez won with a bunch of home runs in the previous election, a 1.6 million difference, Maduro won by a close call by the umpire, who, by the way, used to play in his team. And well, also with the help of a soap opera-like campaign.
En ese escenario, que obligaría a convocar, como manda la Constitución de nuevo, a elecciones presidenciales, ustedes elijan a Nicolás Maduro como presidente de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela. Yo se los pido desde mi corazón.
With these words from an already ill Chavez, the average Chavista felt that not voting for Maduro was almost a curse. If you don't vote for Maduro, Chavez is going to appear at your bedroom in the middle of the night. Beware of Chavez, beware! Thus, we arrived at 2014 with a president who had to fill the boots of maybe the most charismatic leader that South America had known, whose presidency, by the way, had received an average of $56,000 million a year in oil revenues, 4 times more than Rafael Caldera, Chavez's predecessor. In other words, Maduro inherited Ashton Kutcher's role in 2.5 Men. He had to sub for Charlie Sheen, who, like Chavez, was a conflicted and polemic guy, but loved by the masses. Before his death in 2013, Chavez closed 2012 with 20.1% inflation. However, under Maduro's watch, 2013 ended with 56.1% inflation. That is almost twice what the eternal commander had left. So, Nicolás, believing that he was actually Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus, took his first economic decision, giving away stuff that didn't belong to him. Ho, ho, ho! What? What's next? Oh, ho!
Yo he ordenado inmediatamente la ocupación de esa red y sacar los productos a la venta del pueblo a precios justos, todos los productos, todos. Que no quede nada en los anaqueles, que no quede nada en los almacenes, ya basta.
Enough! Enough of people making a living from their businesses. What is this? Are you crazy? I know this sounds like looting, but it is not looting because the president orders it. Yes, my friends, that in Venezuela was known as the Dacazo, something like Black Friday, only darker because it bankrupted many businesses. On the other hand, 1687 protests were documented throughout the country in 2013, 72% of them against Maduro, which means that out of 100 people that were polled protesting, 72 wanted him out, and the other 28, well, they were polled while wearing their public office's uniform. Maduro, super cool Maduro, we love Maduro. Viva Maduro, viva Maduro. So, with low approval ratings and terrible economic decisions, we arrive at 2014 with an inflation of, take it there, 68.5%. By the way, you have to believe that number the same way you believe the number of people your girlfriend tells you she had before knowing you. Because, like the central bank in my country, your girlfriend is lying. In 2014, shortages got worse, and lines to buy food became the new agora, where people met, and instead of discussing the Athenian state, people actually discussed what new insults best fitted the government. You think they're assholes? I think they're dickheads. Assholes, dickheads. Coño de madre, hijo de puta. That's what it is. Opposition then thought that 2014 was ripe for Maduro's ousting.
Es por eso que nosotros hemos planteado la necesidad de construir una salida al desastre, una salida que pasa por construir una fuerza popular que represente a los millones de venezolanos que queremos cambio.
Yes, sir. The Way Out, as its name implies, was a campaign by some members of the opposition to take out the government. And like a marriage, it had communication issues. While some leaders demanded Maduro's resignation, others in reality wanted better legal guarantees for the next National Assembly elections. All of these protests led to severe repression by the government that denounced a coup d'etat, and Leopoldo López, leader of the Way Out, ended up in jail. There were more white t-shirts at that rally than in a beach wedding, a voodoo festival, and a voodoo wedding at the beach. La Salida, the Way Out, left 48 people dead. Metropolitan Mayor Antonio Ledesma as political prisoner alongside Leopoldo López, and it led to a meeting in the presidential palace, where after many years, people could actually see the faces of the opposition leaders on state TV without it being a terrorist from the right-wing documentary.
Aquí por fin estamos dando este debate. O diálogo, o conversación, o como sea, por fin, pero por primera vez en 15 años. Es demasiado tiempo. Lo que en cualquier otro país es normal, es rutinario. Aquí se ha convertido, como alguien dijo, en noticioso, porque es un caso excepcional. Bueno, pero al fin se dio.
Oh, Henry. Henry Ramos Olup is like the arrow. He's not everyone's favorite hero, but when he hits, he's on target, baby, bullseye. That negotiation table progressively dismantled the protests in the street and allowed Maduro a relatively stable government until 2015, when in December, Venezuelans had their favorite event. That is, of course, after the Miss Venezuela. Elections! It's election time, baby! The National Assembly elections were the first official sign that people were unsatisfied with Maduro. The opposition coalition, Unidad Democrática, got a 2/3 majority of the seats and 2 million more votes than the government party. But 15 days before the new assembly assumed its duties, the Living Assembly declared Christmas on the 22nd of December of 2015 and named the new judges of the Supreme Court. God damn it, that was hard.
A esta hora transcurre el tercer debate express en la Asamblea Nacional de Venezuela para designar a 13 magistrados principales y suplentes del Tribunal Supremo de Justicia. El chavismo necesita el voto favorable de las 2/3 partes de los diputados. Al no tenerlo, recurre a otras estrategias. El oficialismo ha llamado a 4 sesiones extraordinarias en apenas 2 días para sellar así el nombramiento con mayoría simple. Es decir,
that move was like the moment when someone notices that a party is going to die and stuff his pockets with food and beer so he can keep eating later in front of the TV. Those express sessions in the assembly less than a month before the new one came in were quite troubling. And what did these new judges do for the Chavista party? Well, before the opposition even got to the assembly, they annulled the election of 3 congressmen, stripping the opposition of the 2/3 majority required for major decisions. It could only have been worse if they had stolen the assembly Twitter account. What? Oh yeah, I forgot. That actually happened too. So, 2016 began with an inflation of 180%. In other words, Maduro had no control over the economic crisis, but the opposition had little control of the assembly. But don't worry, the Supreme Court, just like that friend who tells you that he will look after your girlfriend while you're abroad, took over many of the assembly's duties, giving Maduro special economic powers without the legislative powers' consent.
Con el poder que me da la Constitución como jefe de Estado, jefe de gobierno, presidente de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, un nuevo decreto más completo, más integral, de protección de nuestro pueblo.
For our people's protection. This is almost like an insurance commercial, because it is better to have special powers and not to need them than needing them and not having them. However, Maduro was arriving at the middle of his presidential term, and this was the opportunity for the opposition to activate the recall referendum, a national vote to decide whether the president should stay in power or not. It's almost like that thing you do when you ask your date in the middle of an Adam Sandler movie, are we actually going to stay until the end of this piece of shit? And so, the first recollection of signatures took place to activate the referendum, and the opposition even took this moment to put some pressure using protests so the Electoral Council would approve it.
Caracas nuevamente es escenario de una marcha protagonizada por miles de opositores que se concentran hoy en varios puntos del este de la capital venezolana para participar en la denominada Toma de Caracas contra el chavismo, para demandar a las autoridades una fecha para el referendo revocatorio del presidente del país, Nicolás Maduro.
But in October, the government, using a baseball announcer's catchy phrase, said,
No, 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 no. Díganle que no.
No, 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 no. To the recall proposal is no, 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 no. Well, it sounds funny when you put it that way. Let's use a foreign news anchor to explain it.
El Consejo Nacional Electoral aseguró ayer que acatará la decisión de 5 tribunales locales que anularon la primera etapa de requisitos para activar el revocatorio, todo debido a un supuesto fraude. El miembro de la dirección del gobernante Partido Socialista Unido de Venezuela, Jorge Rodríguez, calificó el proceso de recolección de firmas por parte de la oposición como un gigantesco fraude a la ley y saludó la decisión del Poder Electoral.
Yes, Jorge Rodríguez. He's our Lex Luthor. Every time the opposition soars, he takes out his kryptonite and fucks it all up. And so, in order to kill any attempt to end Maduro's regime, it wasn't enough that the electoral authority canceled the referendum. No, Maduro took out his altar boy suit and announced he wanted to have some talks again, but with the church as a witness.
Tras las reuniones previstas, el enviado del Vaticano para promover el diálogo en Venezuela, Emil Porcherric, anunció que las fases de acercamiento entre la oposición y el oficialismo comenzarán el próximo 30 de octubre en Isla Margarita.
El diálogo o el proceso de diálogo que hemos iniciado hoy va a conducir a buen fin y que colaborando los unos con los otros podremos lograr la paz y la armonía y progreso de esta querida nación.
Wah, 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 wah. Well, these second talks failed not only because the church representatives talked like Charlie Brown's teacher, but also because even when the opposition abided by the conditions of stopping the street protest and legislative measures against Maduro, the government did not do its part and only abided to giving the country the finger. And how did it give the finger? By eliminating any possibility of referendum and suspending governors and mayors' elections that were due that year. It has not freed any political prisoners and has made no humanitarian channel for food and medicines possible amidst a terrible crisis yet. And those were some of the basic opposition's demands. So, finally, it is 2017. The opposition unable to fulfill any of its goals. Inflation is above 700%. Yes, you heard me right, it's 700%. Shortages up to 80% according to that analysis. And the assembly practically disabled. And to make things worse, the country's favorite duo, Chino and Nacho, split up. And don't tell me that this is not the government's fault. I know shit, all right? I know stuff. As if it were not enough, on March the 29th, the Supreme Court took out 2 sentences that empowered it with many of the Assembly's attributions. This took people to the streets again, and they haven't stopped protesting for more than a month. Even the Attorney General, a pro-Chavez figure, denounced a rupture in Maduro's constitutional legitimacy. Now, let's compress the last month. There have been more than 40 people dead in the protests in the street. Chancellor Delcy Rodriguez and Maduro made Venezuela the first country to try to quit the Organization of American States that wants to discuss the state of our democracy. Maduro had eggs thrown at him at a rally. There are hundreds of people in jail for protesting. Statues of Chavez have been taken down, and even the country's most notorious music conductor and apolitical figure took a stand against the government. And to top it all, Maduro started May announcing this.
Más allá de las tradicionales marchas del Día del Trabajo y los enfrentamientos entre oposición y fuerza pública, el 1 de mayo en Venezuela dejó como gran legado la puesta en marcha de una Asamblea Nacional Constituyente elegida por voto popular. Este anuncio fue hecho por el presidente Nicolás Maduro, quien aseguró que busca recuperar la paz en la nación a través de este mecanismo.
Yes, my friends, you want a new president, but can I interest you in a new constitution? Actually, it makes sense. Why keep raping the old one when you can rape a new one? Wait, did I tell you that the constituent that Maduro proposes will be written by hand-picked delegates? Didn't I? Oh, silly me. So, how did we get here? A president that started with a shaky legitimacy, less money than his predecessor, whose party loses the National Assembly for the first time in 17 years, trying to manage a country with the worst economic indicators in the hemisphere, decides to avoid a fair referendum, suspends regional elections, does not abide by any of the possible political deal terms, and takes the country out of any international organization that questions its repressive measures. And all this happens while many citizens try to comprehend while we're sitting on the world's biggest oil reserves, people are eating out of the garbage in the streets and infant mortality has gone up more than 30%. What is going on in Venezuela? Well, a bunch of citizens that by some polls amount to 80% of the country said, "That's enough, boy."
Si quieres disfrutar todo este programa, baja la aplicación, regístrate gratis y disfruta de todo nuestro contenido. Vivo Play realmente te conecta.